Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Mobile Enterprise Web Connection series. My name is Tony Rizzo, and I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Mobile Enterprise, and I will be your host today and moderator for today's session. Today's webinar will present a detailed overview of the strategic advantages a company can create by building sophisticated iPad-based mobile apps. And will feature a presentation from the research firm Yankee Group, a detailed hands-on case study by Eaton Manufacturing on its powerful Power Source mobile app, which the company built in partnership with Antenna. And then that will be followed by a short presentation from Antenna on its new AMP Chroma development platform. Before I continue, I'd like to take a brief moment to thank Antenna for sponsoring today's session and making this opportunity possible. Today's webinar participants include Gene Signorini, Senior Vice President and Head of Research at Yankee Group, who will open today's session and participate in our Q&A at the end of the session. Hi, Gene. I'm glad that you are able to join us today.
Great. Thanks, Tony. Glad to be here.
Gene is Senior Vice President at Yankee Group's research team, and actually he's the Vice President of Research overall, with an expertise in business mobility. He helps businesses understand how mobile and wireless technologies will transform customer, partner, and employee interactions to both drive revenue and reduce costs. Gene's research teams focus on all aspects of enterprise mobility, including mobile transactions, mobile payments, mobile apps, managed mobility, and mobile device and operating system trends. Gene's been in the wireless industry for 17 years and joined Yankee Group from MCI WorldCom, where he held key roles in operations, project management, and business development. Also participating in our roundtable today, we have Kevin Capeta. Hey, Kevin, welcome on board.
Thanks, Gene. Glad to be here.
Kevin's a 15-year veteran of the field of digital marketing and technology. He served as both a technical and business liaison to many top-tier companies throughout his career. His technical and business acumen is the basis of expertise to provide strategic guidance to businesses to help them align technical solutions to their business and marketing needs. Kevin is currently the IT manager of global web and mobile aligned to the industrial sector at Eaton Corporation. His current focus is to help Eaton forge a direction and build capabilities in the web and mobile space that align to their business and marketing goals worldwide and also corporate-wide. His focus around the building technology capabilities, corporate standards, and resource development that align and enhance Eaton's service and product offerings. Now, rounding out our panelists is Ken Parmalee from Antenna. Hi, Ken.
Hey, Tony. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for being here. Ken is the Senior Director of Product Management at Antenna, and he brings more than 15 years of experience in technology and management to Antenna Software, where he oversees product development and innovation. Ken's prior roles include management of technical teams, global project management, network management, and business process management for the likes of Sony Electronics and KPMG. Ken has spoken at a variety of events in the past, including CTIA, Oracle Open World, and other places, and is a frequent blogger on the Mobile Masters community. Now, the first order of business on our agenda today will be Gene's presentation on the emerging trends underpinning mobile app development and the use of tablets in the enterprise. We'll then turn to our case study in which Kevin will detail the many pieces that have to come together for Eaton to deliver a Power Source, a substantial mobile enterprise app that not only had ambitions to be as powerful as a desktop application, but in fact actually managed to deliver on those ambitions. Now, before we go on, I just want to make a quick note that we will not be fielding any audience questions during the presentations. We will have a Q&A session immediately following Ken's presentation at the end of our session today. I strongly encourage everyone in our audience to take the time to ask questions throughout the session simply by typing them into your respective chat boxes and sending them to us. We will answer questions in the order they're received, and we will aim to answer as many as we possibly can. Now, any questions we don't answer will be promptly answered following the session via email. Last, the webinar will be available through Mobile Enterprise website on demand starting tomorrow morning, and we'll allow everyone to replay the session as they need to. Okay, I'm now going to hand over the reins to Gene, who will take us through his presentation. Gene, it's all yours.
Great. Thank you very much, Tony, and thanks everyone for joining us today. As Tony said, I'm kind of here to set the stage for Kevin's discussion in terms of what he's been putting into action on iPads, and as Tony also mentioned, Yankee Group's been doing a tremendous amount of research in the enterprise mobility space. In fact, I actually was part of founding our first enterprise mobility research practice back in 2002. Really what I'd like to do today is during my time is a couple of things. First is to talk about how tablets in a very short period of time have grown to become a legitimate computing platform within the enterprise. The second part of it is to really discuss how businesses need to take a strategic approach to mobility management, in particular mobile application development and deployment. So let's jump into it. And first I'd like to kind of talk about, from a really kind of, 30,000-foot level, talk about kind of these key 5 factors that we see as transforming business mobility today, which will kind of, set the stage for our discussion, in particular around the device space and tablets. So the first, as most folks are probably aware, is this the growing mobile workforce within businesses today, and that really around a couple of areas. First is the total size of the mobile workforce continues to increase. Our surveys show that, roughly 38, 39% of employees can be considered mobile on average. That number continues to kind of tick up every year. But what's increasingly interesting is that the types of employees who are increasingly mobile have changed over time. So traditionally, we thought about mobile workers as those people, our field service technicians, our drivers, our salespeople, but increasingly mobile professionals and knowledge workers are making up a growing proportion of the total mobile workforce. And these users are demanding mobile technologies. As we'll see, smartphones and tablets have become, in many ways, their, platform of choice when accessing information that they need to use to do their business. The second factor is mobile as a channel for consumers, and we'll talk a heck of a lot about that today, but I think it's very important because really that first wave, when we talked about business mobility, it was always in the context, as I said, around our field workers, around knowledge workers, around mobile email, but increasingly, mobile is being viewed as a principal means to interact with our consumers. Our customers are increasingly mobile themselves and using smartphones and other devices to interact with retailers and brands. Transactions are now happening, right, on mobile devices. And so for many companies, mobility is becoming table stakes to be competitive in their market. The other factor is that smartphone and tablet growth continue really to explode. We've seen massive growth in both these categories. Tablets and really iPads, right, have created a entirely new mobile device marketplace just in the last few years. And with that, we've seen, increasingly diverse diversity in mobile operating systems with Apple, iOS, and Android dominating, but, BlackBerry and now Windows Phone, still there. So this creates, a complexity, an added complexity for businesses that just did not exist in kind of a PC-based environment. And with those challenges, creates the need for a much different approach to managing mobility and computing in the enterprise. This fourth trend, which is very much related to the previous trend, is consumerization. So employees take an increasing role in bringing devices to work. So, we all know that one of the most clear manifestations of this concept of consumerization of IT is the bring your own device trend, which we don't necessarily see, going away anytime soon. But the other aspect of consumerization, which I think is an important one, particularly when we talk about things like mobile applications and mobile application development, is that employees, really demand these familiar experiences when they're interacting with technology today. So, while, as we mentioned before, smartphone and tablet growth among consumers is increasing rapidly. These consumers are using applications on their devices. And if as business leaders, we want to develop applications for smartphones or tablets, they need to be delivered from a user experience standpoint on the same par as users are expecting from their consumer applications. And then finally, all of this is really kind of coming together to result in this concept of the rise of mobile applications, right? I think if we look back kind of last year in 2011 and even a little bit beforehand, when we talked about smartphone penetration in the enterprise, for example, it was really all about, well, how do we kind of enable email access? How do we manage these devices to make sure they're secure for users, for things like browsing? But the reality is now, if we're taking these devices seriously as a computing platform, that means using them for real business applications. And so, applications will come in many forms and flavors. And so again, enterprises need to take a very strategic look at how they put in place the right frameworks, the right architecture to deliver on that application experience. So as I said, these 5 factors have really created a post-PC computing environment for both internal and external business interactions. And what I'd like to do now is jump a little bit into what we're seeing from our research in terms of tablet adoption and kind of business leader opinion toward tablets in the enterprise. So, as you said, tablets are launching this new computing platform, computing paradigm, even more so than smartphones. I mean, we certainly saw this interest in kind of mobile computing and mobile applications with that first kind of influx of smartphones being brought in by employees. But really, I think tablets kind of set off a light bulb among business decision makers because they became really a platform, really kind of something that could replace or augment PC usage within the enterprise. So what have we seen? We run annually and actually run on a quarterly basis a very large survey of IT and business decision makers around enterprise mobility issues, and we asked them a number of questions around devices in general and tablets specifically. And what we've seen is that, these decision makers, they're sensing the tablet wave and they're embracing it. They're increasingly ready for it, and I really think they view this as truly something that will either replace, as I said, or augment PC usage. So, they expect 28% of employees on average to be using tablets within 2 years. They expect more than half of these tablets to actually be corporate issued versus employee owned. So we talked about this concept of bring your own device, but I think, even more so, business leaders are getting ahead of the curve, unlike they did with smartphones, where they just kind of almost woke up one day and found out that all their employees had brought smartphones into the enterprise. Decision makers are saying, hey, tablets can be a legitimate computing device for us. We need to kind of get ahead of the curve and think about it as being a corporate issue type of device. And then, again, about half of those tablet users, will be allowed to access the corporate network and business applications from those devices. In terms of kind of leadership, I mentioned earlier that in reality, the tablet market today is overwhelmingly an iPad market. So we talk about tablet market in general, but really it's iPad that's dominating. With that said, as decision makers are thinking about tablets, increasingly, they're looking at alternatives as well. Samsung has certainly made a huge splash overall in terms of the smartphone space, and as such has really kind of established themselves as a force to be reckoned with and a known brand. And you can see here that's kind of reflected in terms of what type of tablet brands decision makers are considering going forward in their enterprise, with it still being predominantly iPad. So, when they're evaluating tablets, well, what are the things that are most important? Certainly technical features rise to the top, but I think what's very interesting, and again, I think what leads us back to the back half of this presentation today, is that it's really critical to be able to easily develop and connect to corporate systems and applications and manage these devices, because ultimately that's what it comes down to. Technical features are absolutely fine, but until you have the applications, really that's really what's kind of bringing these devices to life. And to be honest with you, that's really what has allowed iPad to maintain their dominant lead in the tablet market space, for example, and the fact that they had this rich application ecosystem that was already in place when they launched the iPad which other makers, particularly Android manufacturers, have kind of struggled to catch up to. Again, this is just kind of another way to look at kind of these requirements and emphasize the fact that applications are important. Security is always at the top of the list. Anytime we ask a question about, what's of high importance to you when you're evaluating devices, applications, anything around mobility, security is number one. But as you can see here, availability of productivity tools and applications and selection of applications, that goes back to, that ecosystem of applications and the richness of the application environment on devices are of critical importance. So, we kind of, setting the stage there, we know now that tablets are going to be a reality in enterprise. They already are today in many cases, even though they're being deployed in a lot of ways in kind of small groups. Some companies have kind of expanded and have deployed, tablets in the hundreds and even thousands, but those are kind of few and far between today. So when we're thinking about kind of transitioning now to this new, computing paradigm, a truly mobile computing paradigm, what do businesses need to do to put in place? And we really believe that what this is really all about is a term we're calling enterprise mobility management, which comprises a number of different components, including telecom expense management, connectivity management, mobile device management, mobile application management, with really things like policy, security, compliance, support, administration, and systems management, cutting across those things. And we'll dive deeper into this in the next few slides. The interesting thing is most businesses have already begun to think about these different elements. And in fact, our research shows that each of these different elements, so something like telecom expense management or mobile device management, each is currently planned for deployment in the next 2 years by roughly a third of decision makers. But very few firms are kind of thinking about enterprise mobility management kind of holistically, right, all together in one unified strategic approach. So, and again, I think it's very necessary because if we think of where we've been with mobility for the most part, most companies have kind of addressed it very opportunistically, right? They've been in many cases reactive to their end users, particularly with consumerization of IT and BYOD. Or applications have been delivered as point solutions to particular segments of the workforce, such as those kind of field force environments that we talked about. The architecture has been put in place to address one particular application, not a broad set of applications, and in many cases the architecture for things such as strategic management, development, and deployment just are not in place. We've begun to see, as I mentioned just in the previous slide, some companies taking a more strategic approach to mobility, which is saying, mobility within our organization impacts everyone. It impacts our workers, it impacts our customers, it impacts our partners. We need to think about creating mobility applications or strategic initiatives that address all those constituencies. We need to put in place a common architecture for mobility, and that architecture needs to support a policy which we've put in place that is not a reactive policy, that takes into account all the realities that are happening within our organization, but that we've applied to our business needs. Ultimately, we really see that, and that's, I think, where we are today, which is most companies beginning to think strategically, if not having actually put all these things in place, at least beginning to think strategically. And that's very important because ultimately, mobility becomes what I call holistic, which is it's integrated into all business and IT processes, just like Internet kind of went through these three phases as well. Today, Internet is holistic. Tomorrow, mobility will be holistic as well. So if we dive a little bit deeper into those kind of components of what we're calling enterprise mobility management, as I said, I think there are kind of what I would call kind of four major components with these critical issues such as policy and support cutting across. Not really going to focus on the first two, telecom expense management and connectivity management, although I think they are critical components of an enterprise mobility management solution. What I'd really like to focus on is actually kind of the latter two, which is mobile device management and mobile application management. Mobile device management is really kind of was all kind of the rage over the last couple of years, and certainly we've seen a number of different vendors and solution providers emerge in this space. And mobile device management is very, very important. It incorporates things such as remote configuration and provisioning of devices, firmware and software updates, the ability to back up and restore, and certainly on the security side, password enforcement, single sign-in, remote wipe and lock, and then data encryption on the device. So these things are very critically important, particularly as we embrace things such as smartphones and other devices such as tablets within the workforce. But at the same time, mobile device management is really a means to an end, right? It's about creating a safe environment to deploy applications and access to critical business information. And so from our research, what we really believe is the holy grail of this is kind of more on the far right here, which is mobile application management. Because that's the area when companies can really implement a strategic approach to mobile application development and management, that they can achieve differentiation in the marketplace, they can achieve revenue growth, they can drive productivity and cost savings within their organization. Because ultimately that's what it's all about. I mean, mobile device management is necessary, but it's not going to help you achieve your business goals. It's going to help you set the stage for developing applications, which will help you achieve your business goals. So what are the components of mobile application management? Mobile app development platforms and tools. Application integration, meaning how do we integrate mobile applications with our existing systems in the back end? How do we set permissions and securities on an application level by different employee types? How do we create things such as application catalogs for both our customers and for our employees, right? So once we develop applications, how do we literally deploy those, make them discoverable, and make them downloadable? How do we, do things like pushing applications from a kind of a management administration standpoint? And then how do we do things such as application updating and removal when people leave the organization, right? Or we change applications. These are all critical and important components of a mobile application management set and mobile application platform. So let's talk a little bit more about mobile application platforms themselves. Certainly, these platforms have been around a while. It's been a marketplace that has had some long-term leaders and pioneers, and I would say Antenna Software has been one of those that has been around for quite some time, kind of leading the charge in this segment. And really what we've seen is kind of a shift, at least in terms of the leaders, over time, which is kind of the old paradigm was really either twofold, right? The first was creating a platform for kind of pure custom development, kind of mobile databases or kind of APIs that would connect to back-end systems, but the application environment itself, it was really about creating kind of applications from scratch. There's some positive elements to this, and I won't go through all of these, but you can kind of read them here, and some kind of negative components to them. Some of the negatives, right, were, apps needed to be built from scratch, right? That was very time-consuming, very costly for businesses to do, particularly in this environment of being necessary to be agile and responsive to your internal customers, employees, your external customers. There really wasn't kind of best practices around user interfaces and user experience, which I mentioned earlier, is increasingly critical in this era of kind of consumerization and user expectations. And so that paradigm of custom development, really kind of, as I said, has its pluses and minuses. On the other hand, you had a lot of companies which were kind of coming out with kind of pure out-of-the-box applications, really focused on a particular application segment, whether that was focused on a particular vertical, say financial services, or a particular set of users, such as field service. And for some companies, this is great, right? Because it was very focused around particular, as I said, particular user sets and tasks. It was easy to kind of deploy and potentially customize from there. The UI was kind of developed in advance, but at the same time, it became less flexible, right? Less flexible for customers to kind of make changes. And at the same time, it didn't provide a richer platform to extend applications to other segments of your external user base, your customers, or your internal employees. Really what we've seen is kind of the optimal experience is this new and evolving paradigm, which we're kind of calling configured solutions, but it's really a platform that combines kind of the best of both worlds, right? It's a platform that has strong APIs to connect to existing back-end systems. It provides development platforms and developer tools that allow either internal developers or external partners and systems integrators to build applications fairly quickly using tools, developable tools that they're familiar with. And it also may incorporate a set of kind of pre-configured components that applications can be compiled from. And I think that's important because it goes back to that idea of the user experience and the user interface, which is how do we kind of take best practices for different kind of device types, different kind of interfaces, and allow companies to kind of quickly build, a very kind of rich user experience that really tailors an application to what they need and what the company needs as well. So my last couple of slides, what we've done at Yankee Group, actually last year we developed a framework and methodology for our clients who are kind of evaluating MEAPS, and MEAPS, if you're not familiar with the acronym, is Mobile Enterprise Application Platform. I really think there are kind of two areas that MEAPS really should be evaluated on. First is kind of the technical components of the platform and the user experience itself, which would include things like device support, so the ability to support multiple operating systems and form factors, usability, which we talked about, which is this ability to kind of create kind of a rich user experience and user interface, APIs to now allow integration with back-end, security, as we talked about those security components earlier in mobile application management, provisioning and app management, which would be that kind of application catalog, the ability to kind of push applications but also manage them in an enterprise class kind of application store, application catalog. And then even things like those developer tools, a wide array of developer tools is what's ideal. That will allow your internal developers or external partners to develop in those tool sets that they're familiar with and have used historically. An existing app library, which could be leveraged to, again, quickly kind of develop applications or at least components of applications which could be pulled together. And then the ability to kind of do this at scale within either a hosted or on-premise environment. And increasingly we're seeing companies leverage a hosted model or a cloud-based model to deploy mobile applications and mobile application platforms. On the other side, we really see that there's this other component of evaluating a MEAP vendor, which is on the company itself, which is do these companies have specific vertical or industry expertise when they're thinking about those either the catalog of applications or components, particularly around the user experience and user interface, certainly the long-term viability and their vision for the company, geographic reach, which is increasingly important, particularly for global firms or companies that are particularly deploying business-to-consumer applications to address users not only within domestic environments, say the U.S., but internationally. Support and care, partnerships. So very critical are there systems integrators and VARs who are comfortable in developing on the platform. And then even on the pricing model. So what's the flexibility? Since deploying mobile applications is very different, and we're seeing different pricing models emerge than the traditional kind of software licensing model. So in the kind of interest of time, I don't want to, I kind of know I went through these categories fairly quickly. If you're interested, we do have kind of the full methodology and framework available. But really just want to set the stage for our next speakers. And so kind of thank you. We'd be happy to answer any questions at the end. And I believe the slides will be available for download for you afterwards. So, Tony, back to you.
Hey, Gene, thanks. I think that you've done a perfect job of setting the stage for our case study, which Kevin Capeta of Eaton will present. So, Kevin, I'm going to turn the stage over to you now, and let's begin.
Great. Thanks, Tony. So I hope everybody can see the slides here. So this is Kevin Capeta. What I want to do is I want to walk you through one of the case studies, specifically around our Eaton Power Source application. This application was a sales support tool that we built, specifically targeting our sales teams. So first thing we did was I want to first highlight some of the concerns that we had as we were, unraveling the mystery of mobility. So some of the concerns that we had from an enterprise level, and some of the things that even Gene talked about here, was, first around cost. We wanted to understand how we can control the cost, specifically around hardware, once we start opening up the floodgates of, iPads in the workforce, everybody will want to jump on board, and how do we control that? How do we control the expenses around it? Infrastructure was a big concern as well. Costs around how do we allow the iPads and or tablets or smartphones onto our networks? Do we allow them? And how do we support that ongoing? There's concerns around software. What software will be used on the iPads? Are we going to allow certain iPads or certain software to be on there? Are we going to commission certain software to be on there? And then support. We're used to a traditional, IT support methodology, which, included desktop computers and laptops. But now we need to build a whole other expertise around how do we support these tablets. And there's a bunch of other concerns, but those are the main ones. And more importantly, we wanted to understand how do we justify and measure a return or an ROI. That's what business wants, right? So when we, although, building applications on a smartphone or an iPad is very neat and very cool, it's a new shiny toy, but at the end of the day, it's got to add some business value. Another concern we had was around security. How do we secure the devices themselves? Because the devices are portable, because they're mobile, there were some concerns around the data that's on them, the accessibility to that data, and not only that, but if a device was stolen or lost, can we remote wipe them? Can we control them in any way? Also, we wanted to find a good balance between security and accessibility. We didn't want to build too much security into the iPads or the smartphones, rendering them less functional. So we didn't want huge, 16-string passwords or, tokens or authentication schemes that were too complicated because that kind of dilutes the purpose of how accessible a mobile device is. The last concern was management and governance, specifically on how we manage those devices, who's going to get what, when, how long will they need it, do we deploy some on the shop floor, how will those be controlled, do we give them to individuals, how will those be controlled and managed. Also manage our software offering. How do we manage what software gets put on those iPads or smartphones, and what software are we going to build? Are we going to align them specifically around apps? Are we going to align them to, business units, or are we going to align them to specific business purposes? These were all questions that we were kind of grappling with. And then finally, how do we manage consistency between all our apps? As soon as, mobility came onto the market, or we started gaining, visibility into, what mobility could possibly offer, of course, all of our business units wanted to get in on that game. And how do we manage, consistency across them? As you can imagine, all the different business units wanted to do something completely different. So we did a little bit of analysis. We picked an audience, specifically for PowerSource. It was our sales audience, sales force, and our distribution channels. And we developed some justifications so we can sell the concept. Specifically, we wanted to maximize our KPIs. We knew a few things. We knew that mobile is user-friendly and promotes self-service. So building an application would promote that self-service, be less calls, less interactions, and so it would reduce our technical support costs. We also know that mobile applications also came with no help files or very minimal help files. If you ever played with an application, it's got to be built in a way that is very intuitive and easy to use. So we knew that our technical support costs would go down because of that. We also wanted to minimize or even eliminate, in some cases, the traditional use of a PC. If you talk to Apple, they'll tell you that the reason why the concept behind why they came up with the iPad was that they analyzed how a user uses the PC and developed a tool that addressed 80 to 90% of everything you would do on a PC onto this tablet. So it's conceivable for certain demographics of users, you could actually eliminate the PC. The other side of it was also reducing the need for unnecessary accessories such as mouse, keyboard, Wi-Fi dongle, get the idea. Overall, reducing our technological costs. We also found that it would shrink our cycle times, mainly because of its immediate response ability to customer needs. We could be on site with a customer. A salesperson could be on site with a customer and address the needs immediately. It was instant on. It allowed access to the information immediately. It gave access to our networks immediately. So for all those reasons, we were able to shrink the cycle times. There's also another KPI where it increased customer satisfaction. The iPad offered instant information due to its instant on. It also offered relevant information. You could get to all the information that was relevant to you in your locality based on location based, or even your sales pipeline or your focus, as well as accurate information. Due to the fact that it's always on the internet, we could always push updates. We could push updates to pricing, lead times, things of that sort, product information. All that stuff can be done on the fly. That decreased our lead time. Now, no longer salespeople don't have to write down all the information from a meeting and then go back to their desk, rehash all those notes, and get back to all the people that they were in contact with. They can do it on the spot, reducing that lead time. The ability for self-service also would increase the customer satisfaction and ultimately was more user-friendly. So with all these 4 points we presented to the business, we were able to create a solution that really gave ourselves sales teams a competitive advantage. So with that said, we kind of rehashed what the investment could possibly yield. It would yield, support. It would support growth strategies within our organization. It would reduce the paperwork. It would shrink our cycle times. It would enhance our customer satisfaction, improve internal communications, increase productivity, deliver some time savings, and as well as improve the accuracy of our data. So from that, we started making the case. So we said, okay, now that business has bought into all the benefits, the things that we can get out of it, where do we go from here? What we did was we actually developed a very small prototype. It was just a very short, very to the point application that we put onto an iPad just for demonstration purposes. And we unveiled it. We unveiled it at one of our EDMs, which is one of our distributor events. Distributors from around the world would come in. We'd help them voice the customer workshops, did some online surveys there and data collection. And we literally did hundreds of one-on-one demonstrations. We had a booth. Hundreds and hundreds of people came through there, just kind of showing off with the capabilities of where we wanted to take the iPad or this technology, where we wanted to take it. We gathered all the survey information, brought it back, and we understood that there were certain things that the salespeople needed. And we broke it down. We said, okay, they wanted to be able to, access competitor information. We wanted to give crimp specs, pricing, availability. You get the idea. These are all features that the sales body had kind of communicated back to us through those surveys as to what they found most important. And we listened. Quite simply, we developed an application that addressed those specific needs. Exactly what we did. Phase 1, phase 2, we had these items that we'd be rolling out, and then we did a little bit of competitive analysis. We tried to understand from the market, what are our competitors doing? Did we miss anything? And we actually realized we're doing a lot more than even our competition was, going back to that same goal, which was giving our salespeople a competitive edge. So then we began, once we understood what our project needed to do, what the application needed to do, we went back to exploring the possibilities. We explored, do we do app? Do we do a mobile website? What devices can we support? Are we going to do native versus meet versus hybrid? How are they going to interact with our back end? And then we also looked at different vendors and suppliers that could possibly meet our needs. We chose Antenna after an exhaustive search. Antenna's technology proved to be the one that we wanted to side with, and we delivered. This is a little bit of an idea of what the power source looks like. It holds over 200,000 products, all of our products across the hydraulics organization. It's got 240,000 competitive cross-references. These are all of our competitor information. So if you had a product from our competitor, we can show you what a like product from our repertoire would look like. Crib specs, we had 3D models. We built in an entire 3D modeler that into the application that viewed the CAD drawings. So engineers could use that and send it off to each other to use the CAD files right off the iPad. We also had 1,500 literature PDFs. These were traditionally our salespeople would carry along a huge briefcase full of catalogs, and they would have to manually look through and find information, and of course some of that information is out of date or inaccurate. From the time that the catalog was printed, we were able to push this live onto the iPad with 1,500 literature PDFs, as well as news, videos, distributor locator, those type of information. The benefits we got out of it was we got speed to market. New products and things can be pushed right to the iPad immediately the moment that it hits the market. Ease of use. The iPad in general is very easy to use. We gave our salespeople a competitive advantage. It was total mobility and flexibility on site. There were certain warehouses and production floors that just didn't have very good internet or mobile capabilities. So we built this application to be completely offline. So that was another big hurdle that we had to go through, and we did it. We used the onboard databases, and we built it so that way it only looks for the internet for updates. The entire toolkit was at their fingertips. Also with the iPad 2, you can present. So it was very versatile, flexible for either large groups or very small groups in presenting our products. There's complete feedback loop built right into the application. You get in contact with your salesperson right there on the spot, or even just give general feedback to our support staff. It was anytime, anywhere. We grew sales. It gave the most current information, was served up very easily. This is just a real quick design library of some of the key features of the application, some of the screens that were in there. And then we chose a platform. We're in a little bit of a unique situation where our end user is not just a general consumer base. We can dictate what platforms we were going to use. So for us, we wanted to find something that was the most feature-rich as well as very good support on the back end as a device. So we chose the iPad 2. Kind of backs up what Gene had talked about earlier, where the iPad was the highest penetration. So that was one of the reasons why we chose that, because it had the highest penetration. It's thinner, lighter, faster. It's got a camera. It's got FaceTime. It's got all the features that we would want or could possibly integrate into the future. It was a true mobile business center. It allowed for tons of different ways of interacting with it. It gave us access to our email, to our maps and directions, and all the other features, our appointment calendars, notebooks, all that. It was also the best of both worlds. It sat right in between a mobile phone and the laptop. So it was better than a laptop in the sense that it was easier to travel with. It had a longer battery life. It had a built-in connection. The applications were a lot quicker to get to, and we could always put it on sleep much quicker as well. It was better than a mobile phone because of its larger size. It had the full web browser, and the applications can be geared towards business. For us, this was a real game changer. We definitely changed the paradigm. Our salespeople really took to it. The responses we got were, that they can sell a lot faster. They can search spec and sell, the products much easier. There's immediate access to all of Eaton's hydraulics portfolio. New employees also, the lead time for them to be able to come up to speed on products was a lot quicker, so they became experts a lot quicker. We really stood through to this particular saying. I don't know who said it. If anybody knows, feel free to shoot me an email. Let me know who said it. But we believe that he who is quickest has the most opportunities and most often, and therefore has the competitive edge. And that's what we did for our salespeople through this application. This is also something that the competition just does not have, and it sets us apart. We also have access to product data in the field, and it's a great way to grow our business. These are all responses we got from the business and our sales staff. And finally, if you have to wait to get answers, you could lose that sense of urgency from our salespeople, and then you might lose the sale. So that's PowerSource. That's what we did. That's how we delivered. And we'd love to field questions if you guys have any at the end there. Tony, back to you.
Kevin, thanks a lot. Clearly, when putting together an ambitious app of this sort, there are a lot of moving pieces that one has to manage carefully. And next up, we're going to have Ken Parmalee, Senior Director of Product Management at Antenna. And Ken's going to give us a brief overview of Antenna's latest component to their platform called Amp Chroma. And I will let Ken take it away. It's all yours, Ken.
Thanks, Tony. So what we wanted to do here is actually not just talk about technology, but talk about some of the same things that Gene was actually speaking of earlier in the cycle here. So one of the things that is most relative to business today, and one of the things that's the biggest change from past history of mobile, is just the pace at which mobile is moving. The need for developing an application, making changes to it, redeploying it, getting user feedback, and really kind of hardening those applications, both from a security perspective and from a usability perspective, adding new services, new features, really is critical in keeping the applications fresh, keeping people engaged, making sure that you're providing deep value in applications like the Power Source application. So Amp Chroma is Antenna's product that provides for the platform to be able to build out those capabilities. And we host Chroma in the cloud. So it's a very unique capability where you can take on capabilities as you need them. So as you're in your life cycle of creating applications or deploying applications or management of devices or any of those pieces of mobility, Amp Chroma really establishes your capability in the market to be able to quickly innovate and build on top of technology that's proven, scalable, and really gives you that scope to get into really deep, rich applications. If you look at what the life cycle of mobile is, it really includes a lot of different pieces. Obviously, there's a design phase. In the design phase, you're doing a number of different things. You know, mobile is different than desktop. So you really have to be looking at how it is that you're going to provide for a great experience on whatever device it is that you want to support or set of devices that you want to support. So really good point that Kevin made before. Your experience on a tablet should be different than your experience on a smartphone. You have more real estate, you have more capabilities on these devices, and yet again, a different experience on desktops if you're supporting them as well. And so with all of these things, there are considerations that you need to make as an enterprise in terms of the strategy for building your applications. But in a bigger world, you need to ensure that whatever technology you adopt actually supports these things as well. So if I walk through this life cycle very briefly, I build something, whether that's a prototype or a full application. I want to integrate that into my valuable data systems, whatever they are, to provide the deepest kind of relevant application to my consumers, whatever they are, internal or external. I want to be able to publish and manage the publishment of those applications. Again, whether that's enterprise or consumer, I want to have control of that experience. I don't want to be one of millions of applications in somebody's store. I want to have the ability to actually provide brand awareness and other things around my applications as well. I also want to deploy in a number of different ways. So maybe the best thing for what I'm doing is a web application. Maybe it's HTML5. Maybe it's native. Each of them has different capabilities and has different strengths. And so I need to ensure that as I'm thinking through this process of what I'm going to do, as Kevin was mentioning, Eaton did, I want to make sure that whatever it is that I choose is the right channel for that, and that I have the ability to grow whatever that set of application services are in the future. From a management standpoint, it's everything from enabling the different teams within my company to take on mobility, for those different teams to be able to interact together and with a workflow, so it's not just kind of pointed directly at the development team and they take on all of the burden of supporting mobile. And this is a really significant theme, because if you think about what's going on today in the market, unless you build up a very large stable of developers within your organization, once you start to get to 5, 6, 7 apps, all these additional applications, you're going to start to have challenges in your development side and your integration side supporting those things. So you need to be able to extend the capabilities out to other teams so that they can be a part of the process and actually enable your mobile applications further. And then finally, when I get that information, when I have those apps out and people are using them, whether it's consumer or an internal application, I want to understand how people are using my apps. I want to get the feedback before I get bad ratings in the App Store. I want to make sure that I'm driving the behaviors that I want to within an application. So it's very key to have analytics around web apps as well as native and hybrid, so that I can really drive all of that information back into the design process and into this kind of iterative cycle that we're talking about here. So Antenna provides for a full lifecycle management platform in Chroma, and really when you think about that lifecycle, to enable vast development within an organization, you do have to have kind of this movement through, a flow through, a workflow of applications, as well as the enablement of each kind of set of people within an organization, so that they're not all having to be, learners of mobility and have that steep curve of kind of how to develop on mobile. So, because we're running out of time, I'm going to step through this very rapidly. But we have a suite of tools that we provide as the platform under Chroma to really enable development, to enable design, to enable all these different phases. And one of the unique advantages that Antenna provides for is the ability to very quickly on-ramp into a mobile strategy. And what we mean by that is Antenna has quite a bit of experience. We can help you get on board. You can quickly license and start using the platform in the cloud so that it's not a huge effort to get it into the enterprise. And as you think through this, one of the most critical things is to not just focus on that first app, because that first app may be critical in terms of getting it out quickly and actually making a difference within your organization. But when that decision is made in that vacuum, many times the problem that you're going to run into is that next app has to be supported by something else and a different team of people, and the next app may be yet another. And so you very quickly kind of create a system in the organization that doesn't work correctly together. So finally, I think some of the critical points to consider when you're selecting tools really have to do with what they address in the larger sense. So, Chroma was built specifically for the idea of enabling a company to build a strategy. So that means everything from addressing B2B, B2C, B2E in one set of technologies. It also means being able to deploy in those numerous different ways that we were talking about, web, native, hybrid, and actually addressing a number of different device types, whether it be low-end phones all the way up through smartphones, tablets, desktops as well. And as you consider these things, one of the things that's most key is how do these technologies really enable me to do these things fast? Is there pre-built integration? Is there pre-built workflow? Are there things that enable the technologies to actually move down market, if you will, to your business analysts, to your marketing folks, so that they can actually be included in the development process, but not have to learn any actual development skills. And so that's another critical point to really consider when you're moving forward with something. And the Chroma platform is actually the culmination of over 12 years of Antenna experience. So we have been in the market a long time. We have a very strong presence in both B2E and B2C for the technologies that we deploy. And we've enabled all of that through Chroma in a way that is seamless for that movement through these different phases of the mobile life cycle. So I hope there are questions. I've seen a few come through. I know we're running long, but we're happy to address those. And back to you, Tony.
Thanks, Ken. That was informative. We have a few questions that we'll be able to get through right now, but as I mentioned earlier, anyone who has questions that we're not able to get to, we will get back to you directly via email and answer your questions from that direction. And so let me just re-invite Gene, Kevin back on here along with Ken, and we'll handle some of these questions. The first question And Kevin, you may have touched on this earlier on, but I'm not completely sure. But the question is, what exactly did PowerSource replace out in the field?
So PowerSource really just replaced all of our catalogs. So what it did was it made it a lot more effective for our salespeople to be able to carry a large amount of information and have access to it on the fly. Much more intuitive. That's really what it replaced. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. I think so. Kevin, next question is also for you. How important was it in your interactions with Antenna for them to not only understand, the technical requirements that you had, but also the business requirements? And talk a little bit as well as part of that on how the actual relationship between the enterprise and your meat vendor of choice, in this case Antenna. I mean, how does that have to actually flow? What was the process that went between Eaton and Antenna in order to make this, as I mentioned earlier, ambitious app an actual reality?
Mm-hmm. It's a great question. So first word that comes to my mind is chemistry, right? So just like anything else, any partner, there's got to be chemistry. There's got to be a gel there. With Antenna, we found it very easy to work with. They took the time to understand, what our business needs were. It wasn't just technical. And we had some technical challenges. Large amounts of data, large amounts of, files in general. How do we manage all of that, moving it across, online, offline, that type of thing. So we had some big technical challenges. But beyond that, we needed to help our business and our business leaders understand what mobility can do. And that wasn't something that even we truly understood as the project leaders in building this application. So there was a little bit of education. There was a little bit of hand-holding. We needed an antenna or we needed our vendor to help us through the process. So, another great business leader once said, we look at our vendors as our Sherpas, right? You get a Sherpa to lead you up to the top of the Himalaya. So in that same way, we were looking for our Sherpa to help us understand how we can leverage our own apps or how we can do business better through mobility. And that's the way Antenna served us.
Excellent. So Ken, now that you've been called a Sherpa, can you tell us a little bit from Antenna's perspective what it was that Eaton did right in order to, from both an IT and business perspective, to allow Antenna to really be able to deliver the application that was really called for? Because I know that behind the scenes there were some potentially thorny issues that had never necessarily been tackled by a mobile application before. So how did Antenna manage Eaton?
Sure. So I think a lot of it comes to they have a very visionary thought process in the way that they go about coming to the things that they want to do in mobile. As Kevin was mentioning before, it was quite interesting working with the Eaton team because they have some really great ideas about the things that they wanted to do, and they weren't kind of bogged down in the technical details. So it was very collaborative, and I think we were able to work in a way that enabled us to, really create together something unique, something that nobody in the initial phases actually imagined would come together the way that it did. And I think that's, largely the process of, working through the initial concept and the prototypes and all those things that really kind of bring together the teams, bring together the knowledge of the industry as well as the mobile capabilities in a way that is a game changer.
Excellent. I think we have time for one last question here, and Kevin, this one looks to be directed at you, although Ken, there's probably room for you to reply as well. The audience question is, if you were looking at this project today, would you consider using and leveraging HTML5 to a larger degree? And did you actually use any HTML5 in the PowerSource app?
So the PowerSource app itself is truly built natively. So we didn't use any HTML5. But the question that you're asking is, would I use HTML5? So let me first back up a little bit and say that HTML5 is just a tool. So just like native, any of these tools, mobile web, all of them, they're just tools. The idea is to figure out what the pros and cons of each one of those tools are and whether it applies to your business problem, right? So if the application that you're trying to build fits the criteria of it, I would certainly use HTML5. I would use any of those technologies. To me, that's just, tools in my tool shed for me to consider using. More importantly, though, for us, our needs were a little different. So even today, would I use HTML5 exclusively? For this specific project, probably not. And it's mostly because, our need for internationalization. In the U.S., we've got a high penetration of smartphones. Even that is still not, I haven't checked the stats lately, but last time I checked, it wasn't still a wide majority even in the U.S. But then if you look at the stats across the world, it's even less. So HTML5, although it's supported by all the smartphones, not by the Symbian-based ones or the flip phones or anything like that, right? Some of the other devices and stuff don't render it quite right. So, I think HTML5 still has a little ways to go to mature, but ultimately, though, would I consider it? Definitely. I would definitely consider it as one of the tools in my tool shed. Just whether I'd wield it or not is a different question.
Okay, Ken, any last words?
I would just say that HTML5 should be a serious consideration of anybody looking today. And use your mobile experts to tell you what makes sense and what does not. There are some areas where HTML5 either has a ways to go or is not supporting a certain device integration, something like that. But for many applications today, HTML5 is a great way to go at it. It also provides for a lot of side benefits by just the nature of using HTML5. So I think you need to know what it is that you want to do, or be working with someone who can give a suggestion based on that process that we were just talking about of what it is that you should deploy into as a result.
Okay. Well, thanks. That's unfortunately all the time we have today for the webinar. Any questions that are still outstanding, we will make sure to get back to the folks that asked via email. I also want to say that anyone who's interested in getting copies of the slides, they will be available. Just send us a request and we will get those to you. The webinar itself will be available at mobileenterprise.webex.com sometime tomorrow, probably early afternoon, I would guess, if you want to go back and re-listen to this, or if you want to point some of your colleagues. Otherwise, Ken, Gene, Kevin, I want to thank you for your time today. It was extremely informative, and thanks to the audience for participating.